Hello and welcome to the Her Retirement Podcast. I am your host, Lynn Toomey. And here in my podcast each week, I talk about how to live a better, more intentional, and financially secure life now and in retirement. Whether you're single, suddenly single, or a partnered up woman, your only sure investment is an investment in yourself. And financial wellness, also known as financial security, isn't just a dream, it's a decision. And when you decide to make a commitment to yourself and change your financial destiny, our fresh, modern platform will help you know more and have more now and in retirement. Welcome to Her Retirement. Welcome to my Know More, Have More financial wellness platform, and welcome to my podcast. Are you ready to get her done? Let's do this. Hello there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Her Retirement Podcast. So this is the first podcast of the month of March, and it is very special because we are celebrating National Women's History Month. And you know what? There's some history behind our National Women's History Month that I wanted to share with you all, because a lot of people wonder where it came from, how it started, and what it's all about. And as recently as the 1970s, women's history was virtually an unknown topic, both in our schools and in the general public consciousness. And to address this situation, there was an education task force in California who initiated a Women's History Week. And this was in 1978. I think I was in the 6th grade in 1978. In the week of March 8th, was the celebration of International Women's Day, and it was chosen as a focal point of the observance. The local Women's History Week activities met with enthusiastic response, and dozens of K-12 schools planned special programs to celebrate over the course of a whole week. Over 100 community women participated in doing special presentations in classrooms throughout the country, and an annual Real Woman essay contest drew hundreds of entries. The finale for the week was a parade and a program held in the center of downtown Santa Rosa, California. Moving forward, in 1979, Molly Murphy McGregor, a member of the group, was invited to participate in the Women's History Institute at St. Lawrence College, which was chaired by noted historian Gerda Lerner and attended by the national leaders of organizations for women and girls. When the participants learned about the success of Sonoma County's Women's History Week celebration, they decided to initiate similar celebrations within their own organizations, communities, and school districts. They also agreed to support an effort to secure a National Women's History Week. And then what happened in February of 1980, when President Carter issued the first presidential proclamation declaring that the week of March 8th, 1980 would become Women's National History Week. In the same year, Representative Barbara Mikulski, who at the time was in the House of Representatives, and Senator Orrin Hatch co-sponsored a congressional resolution for National Women's History Week 1981. This co-sponsorship demonstrated the wide-ranging political support for recognizing, honoring, and celebrating the achievements of American women. And as word spread rapidly across the country, state departments of education encouraged celebrations of National Women's History Week as an effective means to achieving equity goals within classrooms. Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, Oregon, Alaska, and other states developed and distributed curriculum materials for all their public schools. Organizations across the country sponsored essay contests and other special programs in their local areas. And you know what? In a few years, thousands of schools and communities were celebrating National Women's History Week. These were supported and encouraged by resolutions from governors, city councils, school boards, and the U.S. Congress. Each year, the dates of National Women's History Week, the week of March 8th, changed, and every year a new lobbying effort was needed. Yearly, a national effort that included thousands of individuals and hundreds of educational and women's organizations was spearheaded by the National Women's History Alliance. By 1986, 14 states had already declared March as Women's History Month. This momentum and state-by-state action was used as the rationale to lobby Congress to declare the entire month of March 1987 as National Women's History Month. In 1987, Congress declared March as National Women's History Month in perpetuity. A special presidential proclamation is issued every year which honors the extraordinary achievements of American women. Another interesting fact about Women's History Month is that each year the National Women's History Alliance chooses a theme, and for 2022, the theme is Women Providing Healing, Promoting Hope. And not surprisingly, it's a direct response to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And what I've read in one of the articles doing a research for this podcast is that it's both a tribute to the ceaseless work of caregivers and frontline workers during the ongoing pandemic, and also a recognition of the thousands of ways that women of all cultures have provided both healing and hope throughout history. And this year in particular, we are reminded of the importance of healers and caregivers who are helping to promote and sustain our hope for the future. In fact, one of my best friends has been an RN throughout the course of her entire career and through COVID. And I always say that she's one of my biggest heroes because she has stuck in there and she has cared for people, as well as I have a niece who's also an RN and has, again, been on the front line of helping care for people. I've actually been a caretaker for my mother, who's actually been going through chemotherapy for cancer throughout COVID. And so I think women play that special role in all different forms. And it's amazing and wonderful that we can celebrate women and their contributions, and that the whole country is able to take the month of March and recognize those unique and special contributions. And by way of social media posts and blog posts, I will be digging around and researching some very special women who have made some significant and perhaps little known contributions to women in our fight for equality, or in wars, or in peacetime. And I just am excited about bringing some of those stories to light throughout the month of March. But I thought it was interesting as I was doing some research for an interview I did the other day. I talked to a writer who's writing a story about a brief history of women and their search for equality and financial equity. And she interviewed me for this article that's going to come out later this month. And I was digging around for some statistics to talk to her about how far women have come and how far we still have yet to go. And I think it's important for us to recognize that, yes, women have made amazing strides in the short time that many laws have been put in place to help with equity and protect some of our rights. But I still think there's quite a bit more to be done. One of the statistics that I uncovered was that women are very scarce at the top and are overrepresented at the bottom. Female-dominated occupations such as childcare and restaurant service continue to occupy the lower rungs of the U.S. wage ladder. Women make up 67% of workers earning the federal minimum wage, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. A wage rate stuck at $7.25 since 2009. By contrast, women at the top, i.e., as CEOs of Fortune 500 firms, represent only 8% of CEOs. Another statistic that I uncovered is women make up a very small fraction of global billionaires. Most inequality analysis focuses on income, i.e., the wages earned from a job or from capital gains, rather than the wealth, the sum of one's assets minus their debts. Income inequality, while stark, pales in comparison to wealth inequality. The divides become even more dramatic when viewed through a gender lens. So it's a very stark number. Basically, countries with more than 10 women billionaires in the United States is 77, in Germany 32, China 30, Hong Kong 11. It's a crazy inequality in terms of the number of billionaires. US women also have significantly higher poverty rates than men. The gender poverty gap widened over the past 50 years. In 1968, 10.8% of women aged 86 to 64 and 7.2% of men in this age group lived below the poverty line. In 2016, 13.4% of women in this age group were living in poverty compared to 9.7% of adult men. Another interesting statistic that I uncovered was that the pandemic caused more mothers to stop working than fathers. And I think it was clear that women had to stop working to become caretakers or to homeschool their children. It was just uh, a vastly different perspective on women and mothers who had to stop working versus fathers. Few other statistics that I wanted to share. Women are less likely to be entrepreneurs and face more disadvantages when starting businesses. In 40% of economies, women's early stage entrepreneurial activity is half or less than half of men's. And women are constrained from achieving the highest leadership positions. Again, only 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. And when you look at things like financial literacy, comparing financial literacy among women with men provides context useful in tailoring some financial literacy initiatives to the particular needs of women because we lag behind men in our financial literacy. As expected, personal finance knowledge tends to be lower among women than men. On average, men correctly answered 56% of a study called the PFIN Index, a series of questions that were posed to a group of men and women. 60% of men correctly answered over one half of the index's questions, with 27% answering over 75% correctly. In contrast, 21% of women demonstrated a relatively low level of financial literacy. They correctly answered 25% or less of the index questions, compared with 15% of the men. And it's interesting when you look at financial literacy and the gender gap, where the gap is the greatest is in investing. Another wide gap is in savings. We do pretty well in budgeting. In consuming, it's very, very close. One of the other areas is comprehending risk. There is a significant gap there between men and women. And about 50% of women ages 55 to 66 have no personal retirement savings compared to 47% of men. Women also lag behind men at the other end of the spectrum. 22% of women have $100,000 or more in personal retirement savings compared to 30% of men. Another interesting statistic that I uncovered was the amount of venture capital, which is funding that goes to people that are starting businesses, and they go to venture capitalists to get investments in their businesses. The amount of venture capital in the world, or in the country at least, going to female entrepreneurs is lower in 2021 than it has been for the last 5 years. This is especially true for startups with all female founding teams, which have raised just 2.3% of the venture capital in 2021. Startups with mixed gender co-founders raised 11.7% of funding. In other words, 86% of venture funding still only goes to men. So it's very, very one-sided that men are getting a lot more venture capital money than women. And it's also interesting that investors tend to ask men about their startups' potential gains and women about their potential losses. As a result, the researchers in this study found the startups with male founders raise 5 times as much as those of female founders. And I bring this up because it is a personal issue with me. I come from the startup world of software, And I've recently put together my own software program and thinking about going out and raising capital. It's a little intimidating when you see these types of numbers. And of course, there's nuances behind any statistics that one needs to look at. But I guess the point of bringing up some of these statistics is that we still have a long way to go. And I think that we have a long way to go in bringing women up out of poverty and also getting more women represented at the top in those CEO roles. I think also women are doing very well in starting new businesses. They are launching businesses at 3 times the rate of men. And the good news is that it is also proven that we women are better investors. Once we get over the hump and the obstacle of literacy, of understanding investing, we actually tend to do a better job than men. And that is also another statistic that I uncovered during this research. I think we have tremendous opportunity, right? We have tremendous opportunities that didn't exist with our grandmothers and our great grandmothers. And I am excited to see where we can go. And her retirement was founded on the idea that we can lift women up, we can help women get educated, we can help women improve their financial situation, we can help women have a better retirement, a more secure, financially secure retirement, and perhaps happier as a result, less stressful. And it's all about knowing more and having more. I say that every week in my podcast, but I truly believe that the onus is on us, right? It's on us to go out and to get educated, getting financially literate. No one's going to come and do it for us. We have to be willing to commit the time to get smarter, to know more, and potentially have more as a result. And of course, I always say, having more is however you define more. It might not always be in a dollars and cents perspective, but my point is that while I think that we have some unusual and unique to women obstacles to overcome, I think that we also have to accept responsibility for our own education and make that commitment to ourselves. And I like to say that the best investment you can make is in yourself. And I wholeheartedly believe that. So I want you to join me in celebrating Women's History Month and join me in thinking about and remembering the women who have blazed the trail for us. And I will be highlighting some of those special women throughout the month of March. And I look forward to next week's podcast. And I think next week I'm going to educate people on a very important topic that can help women potentially very, very much in retirement. And I've been asked quite a bit about it. And it's on the topic of annuities and creating guaranteed income sources in retirement. It is proven that annuities help people sleep better at night. So some people call it sleep insurance. I've seen that in some of my research. But I'm going to cover everything about annuities. And if you want to pay attention to the Her Retirement Facebook page and the Her Retirement LinkedIn page, you can see some of these women that I will highlight in history and some of the contributions that they have made. Thanks for listening. Until next week, have a great week. Here's to women. Here's to getting her done. Here's to knowing more and having more.